So good evening, everybody. We continue on Perek Nun Beis, the 52nd chapter, which I believe we began this last week. I think this is the second class on this chapter. The chapter begins on page 144. We continue on page Ayin Gimel, pretty much in the middle of the page. Again, as we mentioned, in Aleph, the Alter Rebbe concludes Lukuti Amorim, which is the first and the central part of the entire Sefer of Tanya, with these three chapters, which has a exclusive message, has a separate message on its own. Again, definitely group these. You can group these three chapters together, which becomes again the culmination of the entire Tanya. When you read the literally the last page, you can appreciate why the Alter Rebbe culminates the whole message of the Tanya with this that he presents via these three chapters. We're holding in the middle of Nun Beis. You can see the previous class and Perek Nun Aleph, and for that matter, all the previous classes from the beginning of Tanya on the original website, which we've mentioned time and again, namely for the newcomers on tanyaonline.com. Again, it comes up you might be watching it on the INN, but the original you can see it on the original where it comes up originally with the access to all the previous classes. That is the good thing also with this website. It's built in a way that you can follow the class easily with the text. The text has a separate scroll bar. Again, the present class, the previous class on this chapter, and Perek Nun Aleph, and again all the other previous classes, a click away, very easy to find. But again, it comes up in the same fashion with the text and it's separately, and a text and a separate scroll bar. So again, easy to follow accordingly. We continue here. Umahu lavush yochel hastir lalbisha. What is the lavush, the garment that can conceal and cover b'leis batel b'mitziuso be'eiro. Now we did read these few lines already in the last week's class, but we're going to begin. It's a kind of a new beginning. So the Alter Rebbe, I always feel compelled, when we start the class, we got to get everybody into it in a way that we have to take the time to explain what we learned till now in order to understand. You can't begin a class of Ma'al Lavush, what is the garment that can conceal this light, and it should be Batel B'Metzias, completely know where we're coming from. So we take the time, but it's really not fair to take the time, because it's really a click away. It's a click away to go to the last chapter, beginning Perek Nun Beis, or if you want to follow this message, beginning of Perek Nun Aleph, which Alter Rebbe begins with this thought that he presents in these three chapters. But a little bit, we always have to. Still not sure. Again, if it's a click away, you can see the end of the class if you're new, if you're coming in this week. But if you could see where does the Ma'al Lavush come from. But again, a bit will definitely take. We can't hold ourselves back to take a little bit, the moment to try to come into this Umahu Lavush. So basically, the Alter Rebbe explains that the Nefesh at the beginning of Nun Aleph, with a very elaborate example, very detailed, articulately explained the way it works, that with the Nefesh Adam, the soul of man, as it enters its body, the vivifying, the vitalizing soul, which gives chayas, energy, and vitalizes every detail, every organ, every limb, every faculty, every talent, and so on. But its entry into the system goes through the brain, as we all know it. Prior to that, it's a strong, powerful core of light. It has just the potential to be mechai, in other words, to come into the system and vitalize the entire organism of the body. But nonetheless, before it enters, it has nothing of meichen, midei, meichen. In other words, can't identify the particular energies, if it's the intellectual energy or the power to see, to hear, to walk, and so on. It's only when it enters into the system, then everything develops. It comes from a concealed manner to a revealed manner, from a state of potential to a state of actuality. But nonetheless, because it's so powerful, the interface between the nefesh and the way it's mechaya the guf is the brain. Again, we know this as the nerve system. The brain is beyond the vital organ. It's where the nefesh enters, and that's basically the nerve system, to which from there, once it settles into the meichin, into the brain, then from there, it continues to give chayas, again, not in time, but in idea and concept. It continues to give chayas to all the different limbs. Again, the limbs, the organs, all faculties. And therefore, it's crucial. Again, it doesn't develop only after it settles in the brain. Again, known to us as a nerve system, and until it begins. Kochamamar, so too, Hashem Himself is beyond expression, manifestation. He's the way He's formed Himself by Himself. The Olamas don't really exist even. He's completely removed, as Al Rebbe's Lashon is from Almid Galia, just like He's removed from Almid Gasia. Conversely, Kimashu Matzi Sham, Kacha Matzi Kan, Hashem is everywhere, meaning to say that the Olamas, is beyond being Mechaya Olamas, beyond being the source or the living, vitalizing, the Mahava Mechayim Mekayim, bringing into existence, and being vitalizing and giving the energy all to these elements, because they were just transcendent, similar Havdil of the Nefesh. But then it enters, Hashem enters into the system again. They created worlds in Mahava Mechayim Mekayim. There's no other independent energy. It's the Eibishter's Memala Kalam, the Eibishter's Seviv Kalam. But dealing now with Memala Kalam, that's only when the Eibishter Kaviyachal enters into the system again. We're recapping this with much brevity. Got to appreciate it adequately, accurately. Is just you have to go through the previous chapters, but basically to get to this over here, to this idea that Hashem has to kaviyachol the energy. The Hashem enters into the Chabad kaviyachol, the brain system, the way it's on high by Hashem. What is it? The Chachmei Das. That's the Torah. The Torah becomes the garment through which Hashem ultimately gives chayas to all the elements. If it's Atzilus, and the B'ri Yitzir Asiyah, and he explains, in essence, in every single Olam, there is the Chachmei Das of that Olam. So by us, it's one system. The organ, the nefesh entering to the brain, the brain, which is the nerve system, and from there, everything receives its chayas. But within a Kodesh Baruch Hu, there's different structures. Every Olam has its own structure. Atzilus, his own Bria, and then Yitzira, and then Asiyah, and then the Asiyah and Elam Hazat Tachti. So Kodesh Baruch Hu entering into Atzilus, and eventually into Malchus Atzilus, which creates even the Neshamas, in all the Neshamas of Atzilus and so on, whatever it accomplishes. All it accomplishes in Atzilus, but it's after the Ein Sof enters the brain system, which is Hashem's Chacham Das, which is ultimately the Torah, becomes that garment to which HaKadosh Baruch Hu filters His light through the Olam and establishes, and is manifest through the Olam, and in Malchus, which again, Malchus is about creating, bringing things into existence, and Atzilus is emanation more than creation, but nonetheless, Malchus is the Kayach, which is Mahava Mechayim Mekayim, but that's only because, again, just like by man, it went through the Hashem's Chacham Bina Das. Then Alter Rebbe says in Bria, there's a new system, which is Chacham Bina Das of Bria. A new setup of 10 spheres. So in order the Eibishter should have Kaviyachol an impact on Bria, and there should be the creation of Neshamas Malachim and Bria and so on, which is again through Malchus. And by the way, when we say Malchus, usually it's Malchus Chol Malchus Kolam, and the Malchus is the Malchus of the subsequent Eilam, but also in this context you see the Alter Rebbe uses the Malchus of being the impact of that very Eilam. Not to go to that right now, but just it's worthwhile to mention, not to get confused, but it ought to go through the Chachmei Das of that particular Eilam, which Alter Rebbe calls it the Heichel Kochi Kochi, which is the chamber, the shrine of the Holy of Holies of that Eilam, which is the Chachmei Das, because it has that Kayach to allow the Ein Sof to ultimately be manifest into that very Eilam. And so too, which is, and more so, not only is the Kayach, is the reason is because it's the nerve system, it's the brain, that's the point of Holy of Holies, just like the brain is beyond the being a vital organ. And so too, the Kodesh HaKadoshim of every single Eilam, that's the Chachmei Das of that Eilam. And so too, when it comes to Elam Yitzir and Elam Asiyah, and then Elam Hazat Tachti, Alter Rebbe would eventually say that the Elokus, in order to have an impact in Elam Hazat Tachti, went through as well the Kodesh Kodashim, physical Kodesh Kodashim, which was in the Beis Hamikdash. And again, which this is going to be the culminating message of Alter Rebbe Perikut Gimel, the 53rd chapter. that through the Kodesh Kodashim, in the end of the day, everything, that's the way that Kodesh Baruch Hu's connection, so to say, with Elam Hazeh. And when we don't have the Kodesh Kodashim, it's through every person who's learning Torah. He becomes the Kodesh Kodashim through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachal filters his light. But again, not to jump the gun, we're learning now about the Lavush, the original Lavush, which could conceal this great potent light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which could be the interface in order that Eibishter would continue to bring existence into all elements, starting from Elam Atzilus. And what is that? That's the Torah and the mitzvahs, which is the Chacham Min Das, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we learned last week. And the reason why it's Chacham Askam and Bin Askam, we can appreciate Torah's Chacham Bin Das, is because it comes from Hashem's Chacham Bin Das, starting from the Chacham Bin Das of Atzilus. Now, just to point out one thing over here, you see the Alter Rebbe. So let's see it inside. Maybe we'll just see this first lines inside. Then we'll see why the Alter Rebbe adds one point even regarding the Torah. The Torah evolves and ultimately becomes and invests in the physical, which are the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, and so on and so forth. Why does he add that? But let's take it step by step. The first thing he says, what is the garment that can conceal and enclose HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof, in a way v'leiz battle b'mitzias ba'ira, would not be annulled in that light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like we said before, that we learned last week, mitzvah the Eibishter himself, nothing could, there's no way that anything could comprehend or tolerate this great air and stay within existence. And he says, to what a degree would it be bottle? It would be bottle to the degree like Eira Shemesh B'Shemesh. Again, we should not take the time. Generally, we had it in Tanya more than once, but last week as well, you can see that the concept of bittul to the extent of nothingness as no thing at all, not just become humble, crumble, or anything. It becomes nothing at all, just like the ray of the sun, which is, it's in the sun because if it's out of the sun, if you see the ray having its impact out of the ball, the orb of the sun, you understand that it's in the sun as well. But if it's when it's in the sun, there's nothing else other than the orb of the sun, and that completely is, the ray is non-existent entity because of the potency of the sun itself. The ray doesn't stand a chance even to exist, and that would be the bittul, the nullification of everything in the face of the Ein Sof. So you need the garment in order to conceal that, and again, that would become the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would be able would be manifest, and again in the elements starting from Atzilus, and then eventually the Bria again through its own Heichel Kodesh Kodashim. But let's focus, let's say one Olam by one Olam, which that's what is the garment. This is the garment, which is the Chacham Bin Das, similar how the way exists by man, that the nefesh enters into the system via the brain. And that is the Torah. That is the Ritzayim Chachmasei Hamalubashim Torah Mitzvah, which is invested in Hashem's holy Torah and His mitzvahs Haniglas Lanu, which is revealed to us, Lvanenu, to our children, which is again based on Pasuk in Torah. Niglas Lanu Lvanenu, because they Yaisim Chachma Naf, because Torah comes from Chachma Law. This is the supreme Chachma Le'elam Alma Dizgalia, which is higher from the Alma Dizgalia, the revealed, the manifest worlds or world. The Iyu Chakim, because Hashem's Chochmah is beyond that. We know that there's a terminology which we say Pasach Eliyahu, Iyu Chakim. Hashem is Chochmah, but V'lei B'Chochmah, not on the known Chochmah, the way we can appreciate Chochmah. It's far beyond that. As Alter Rebbe explains, the Shaykh Memuna, Hashem's Chochmah, there's no similarity to our Chochmah at all. It's just He is the Shadish, the source of Chochmah, and eventually it evolved in the Chochmah that way we know it, but Chakim v'lei b'chachmidi is way beyond that, and then this is again beyond the Chachma. Lei b'chachmidi is certainly beyond any Olam, certainly Almedi's Galia. Now, just to point out, what Alter Rebbe is going to add over here, and let's go on, Commissioners with the same spirit of this message. That Eirin Sof Baruch Hu Melubash Miyuchad B'Chachmila, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is enclosed and united, is one with the supreme Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For who is Baruch Chachmasi Echad? That Hashem's Chachma is one. So therefore, this becomes the garment and the interface, similar again to the potency and to the delicacy and this of the brain. Again, because it is a extremely deep and complicated organ, but again complicated demonstrating its depth, which is similar lahavdil to Hashem's chokhmah, similar to the Torah and the mitzvahs, which are far beyond the idea of this the Almadis Galio in this case or any other when it comes to the nefesh being manifest in the body. The brain system is extremely complex, sophisticated, deep, to the extent even in modern science, figuring out a lot of the other limbs, the brain is still yet to be comprehended, because this is something extremely, extremely deep and again sophisticated, and this is why it becomes the interface, the way the nefesh would accomplish have an impact in the body is first its settlement, it's connecting with this deep and lofty or profound organ, which is the meich, the brain, and so too lahavda when it comes to Hashem. Hashem is manifest through the chokhmah min hadas, which is through the Torah. Now the question really is, if the Torah is higher than the whole Almidis Galia Kadosh Baruch Hu being manifest, in that case even higher than in the example the nefesh. So this is where the Alter Rebbe would add again in the example the nefesh. The nefesh is still a nefesh which is there to vitalize the body, but we say it got to go through the nerve system, which is the brain. And there we can understand it. But if we're talking about Hakadosh Baruch Hu's Chochmah, and we say it's even higher than Almidis Galio, so apparently, if nothing could tolerate the Shechina, the Ein Sof, how could it tolerate the energy of Torah, which is Hashem's Chochmah? And in the face of Hashem's Chochmah, everything should also be batel. You get the point over here? The question, if you're saying that the whole Chochmah, this is the Ein Sof, so we're back to square one. When it comes to the mushal, in the end of the day, the brain, with all its sophistication, it's part of the organism of the body. So it's a deep dimension within the body, and therefore becomes the mediator, so to which the nefesh would enter into the body. But here you're saying time and again you're dealing with Eivsh's Chochmah, so we can understand Chochmah min hadas, the energy would go through the Hashem's Chochmah min hadas, but that's when we say Chochmah min hadas is really a Chochmah min hadas, which is, so to say, Yediyah, and something which is attainable, comprehensible. But when we say this Chochmah is Chochmah Eila Le'el Mamlidis Galia, meaning to say it's transcendent of everything, and as the Lashon over here, it's v'lei b'chochmah yediyah, not in a chochmah which is known, and namely, this is what he says later, that the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one with chochmah lah. So what did you gain? So what did you gain? In other words, because this chochmah, so granted that the chochmah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu would be the right keli, because let's call it again, as we use in the mashal, the sophistication of the brain, and here we're talking about something very lofty. That could be the mediator and the interface between the elokus and elamis. That makes sense, but then when you add to that the chokhmah is leiba chokhmah idiyah, it's not a knowledgeable chokhmah, a chokhmah that we can comprehend, because within that chokhmah you have the oir ein sof, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is one with chokhmah, Hashem bechokhmah. Oh, then you say, if that's the case, so then now you need a new garment, because everything should be batel again in the face of this chokhmah, which is one with the Eid Ein Sof. And what kind of bittul? A bittul of, similar to Eid HaShemesh B'Shemesh again, similar to the light of the sun, the ray of the sun within the sun, that it's completely batel to the extent it's in a way of becomes not nothingness. And in other words, its bittul is a total absolute bittul, as no thing at all against it. You're starting from square one. So this is why the Alter Rebbe said this is something which, here it's different, or the fact that the Torah ultimately comes down. There's a dichotomy within Torah. That the Torah is associated with Chachmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it still has a connection to Olam, to the lower Olam. Is still invested in this very physical Olam. It becomes to be in Varim Gashmim, in the physical, these physical objects which Torah is so associated with. Shnai Meichs and Batalas, you look up in a Mishnah, you talk about two people holding a talus. One says it's mine, one says mine. This is the way Torah manifests and evolves itself, and he ultimately manifests in this very physical Olam. If it's mices, or the mitzvahs that we do, it's the physical esrog, the tefillin, which is the parchment of the animal, and the tzitzis, which is the wool, and the letters in Sefer Torah is physical ink. And the Torah ultimately invested in the physical. And this is where we have that. This is why Teddy becomes the mediator, so to say, between the Ein Sof and Olamis, because Teda has this duality to it. In one hand, it's Miyuchad Bein and Sof Baruch Hu, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, it evolves and becomes and invests in physical items, which is the 613 mitzvahs of a Teda, which is a significant majority of the mitzvahs, is dealing with the physicality of Elam Hazah. And this is where it becomes similar, at least a bit in our appreciation, to the way it works by the human being. If you can say lahavdil, because by the human being also, this is about the sophistication of the brain. The brain, in one hand, the reason why it's the initial keli to which the nefesh enters, because it has something very nafshis to it. It's a very lofty and an abstract type of limb, something which is unusual, no parallel to any other limb, even the vital organs of the body. But conversely, it is in the end of the day part of the organism of the body, and therefore it could be that intermediate in order to which, or the interface in order to which the nefesh would enter into the body. And this is what the Alter Rebbe adds. True that the Teira, Chacham Binasish V'Daita Shel Baruch Hu, which is the Teira, is one with the Ein Sof. It's Chakim V'Lei B'Chachma Yediyah, not something which you could understand and comprehend, or a Chachma that we're used to, because it's connected to the Ein Sof, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is beyond comprehension. But together with that, the fact that Teda came down and he was involved in Varim Gashmim, the physical, so therefore Teda doesn't need another garment. You don't need to start again, because Teda would be that garment because it has this duality. And that's what he adds these words. Yorda b'seisen madregas. Madregel and madrege went down into the hiding, so to say, of these levels, from one level to another level, b'shtalshul elements of the evolving of all elements, actually slapship b'dvarim gashmim, it invested in the physical, which is a Taryag mitzvah Torah with the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. And again, the reason why the Alter Rebbe adding this is for this which we just mentioned. Because if not, again, this garment should overwhelm everything again. But the Alter Rebbe says it has this, the Torah, in the end of the day, no need to repeat, but again, just to in brief, it has this idea of its connection to Elamis, as we know so very well that the Torah precisely deals with the physical, and therefore, in the end of the day, it would be the garment to which HaKadosh Baruch Hu would come down and to be this emanator and ultimately creator and so on. And that's what he in that area, again, starting from the Chacham Bin Adas of Atzilus, but then eventually when it comes down to the next Olam, which has its own structure, it's a separate world with Chacham Bin Adas, Chesed Gvura Tiferes Netzach Yisod, and Malchus of Bria. And so to Yetzirah. So when it enters, we need to appreciate that the Eid of Atzilus, in comparison to Bria, is similar also to the Nefesh, which is divested of the whole Metzias of the body. The Eid of Atzilus is so potent and strong in comparison to Bria. It's kind of, there's nothing which it could even be manifest in Bria without that, also that entry into, so to say, the brain system of Bria, which is again the Heichel Kochim of Bria, which is the Chochem Bin Adas of Bria. And then it would go and it has its impact on Bria till Malchus, which Malchus is the energy of creation, and in this case with Bria would be the creation of the Neshamas and Malachim and so in Olam Bria. As later he says the Talmud is associated with Bria, but let's see it inside. As it descends from one world to the other, the Shechina also descends in every single Olam. And where does it start? The starting point is the Heichel Kochim Shemachal Elam V'Elam, the chamber of Holy of Holies, which is in every single Olam, which is the Chacham Bin Adas of that Olam. Similar again, the Nefesh entering to the system of the body goes through the nerve system, goes through the brain. So again, by us it's one, but in every Olam has its own set of spheres. It's a world on its own, quite frankly. In other words, it's a world on its own, so it's a mitzias on its own. So the air to come into the next world has to go into through the kochi kochim, the shrine of kochi kochim of that particular island, which is the chacham bin das of that island. Like it says in Zeir, Veitz Chaim, Shechina, Shemachos Datzilus. The Shechina, which is the Malchus Datzilus, Shehibchin is Gila in Tzal Baruch Hu, V'chayis Shemel Elomis, which is the revelation of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the vital energy which shines to the Elomis, to the worlds of Elochein, in Ikraz Ver Hashem. We're reading the brackets over here, these two love you line. This is the Dvar Hashem Baruch Piv, the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the spirit of Hashem's Malka V'yachol. As Dal Rebbe explains in Shaykh B'Munah, Malchus is the kayach, which is mahava machai mekai malchus chol malchus kol elamim, similar to speech. Remember, we said there's a whole system within the person: his intellectual faculties, his cognitive faculties, chacham min hadat, and his emotions, which is his chesed gvur tiferes netzchitim. So it's still within the system of the person. You can emote again without expressing that emotion. It's not the classic way, but the heart could spike up a certain feeling to somebody if it's with compassion, kindness, severity, discipline, and so on. But then there's the garment which expresses that, and it could express the intellect of the person as well, starting from the thoughts where he formulates the letters, the manner to which he will express. May it be an intellectual concept, or may it be a feeling, an emotion, which also starts formulating again in oisius hamachshava, in letters, but eventually what brings it out to outside the person is his mouth, is his speech, as well as action. But speech is the first point when the person leaves his own system and becomes relates to others. If it's a master and a pupil, he's relating his wisdom through his speech to the pupil, to the student. And if it's the poor person, which he established this emotion towards the poor person, then he speaks to the poor person, come in, take a piece of bread. He follows suit with action as well. But that's the first step of the person leaving, so to say, his own system and relating to others. So to Malchus is Peh, is the entire Atzilus. Malchus represents the Peh, meaning to say that's the energy which is Mahava, Mechayim, Mekayim, which relates to others, becomes Malchus Cham, Malchus Kol Elamim, or even in the creation of that very world, and namely in the subsequent world, Malchus Cham, Malchus Kol Elamim, the way it's leaving its domain and relating to, so to say, something else. That's the Dvar Hashem Baruch Piv of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says Kaviyachol, because Hashem doesn't talk like we talk, but that's figuratively the Dvar Hashem, the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's similar to the way just by man's speech is this which he reveals. It's a kayach, it's a faculty to which the human being reveals his hidden thoughts and concealed thoughts to the listeners. It's the transition point from the person who is for himself and relates to others. Hashem, this Malchus, that's the Dvar Hashem Elohi, which is Mahava Machayim Mekayim, which gives life and existence to all the subsequent elements, or even again within the element itself, Malchus Chol Malchus Kol Elamim. So that Shechina, when it has to invest in the subsequent Elam, it's also too potent in comparison to the other Elam, to the lower Elam, to the lower world. And therefore it also has to have that mediator, that interface, in order to have an impact on the subsequent and lower world. As we mentioned, that even though in that particular world it was already developed, or that it was manifest in that world, but in comparison to the lower, to the inferior world, it's also carries, so to say, that potency of that core energy of the nefesh in comparison to the way it would share, so to say, would allocate or share or would give off the particular energies to every faculty, to every limb, to every organ. And therefore it needs that mediated, intermediate, which is the meichen, which is the brain, again is the nervous system. And so too, it is too strong, and therefore it has to, in order to have an impact on the subsequent elements, also mislabeshes beheichel kochikochim debriya, which is again the chamber of kochikochim debriya. And what is it? That's the chachma min hadas, the briya. And then mislabshus malchus debriya, and then eventually you could invest in malchus debriya. And malchus is again the creating force, because it went through that interface, which is the chachma bin hadas of that particular elam. It could eventually enter into the malchus, becoming the the energizing or creating force and energizing force, which is therefore nivra neshama v'malachim shebebriya, which are created. It creates the souls and the angels, which is in Bria, which is his malchus the Bria. And again, you see over here that Rebbe using the malchus not only for its impact in the subsequent Eilam, but even on that very Eilam. Here the Rebbe adds misham nimshach hatalmud shelefaneinu. This from there, from Eilam Bria, additional to Eilam Bria being the source for the creating force for the neshamas and malachim, which are pretty much the main creations in Eilam Abriya, but also from there you have the Talmud Shilfanenu, which is the Talmud knowing to us as the Gemara. What's the connection to the Gemara and its association with Eilam Abriya? So he explains over here, it's Commission's Bar B'Shem Tikkunim, like it says in the name of the Tikkunim, which is part of Zayar as well. Sheba Eilam Abriya Meiris Mishpiyas Sham Chachmas B'Nasa V'Daita Shalein Sabaruch, because in Eilam Abriya, and this we learned in Perek Lamed Tes as well, and Mem, that in Eilam Abriya it shines there, and it is manifest there the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Atzilus, naturally in a very much of an intense, contracted manner, in order the neshamas and the malachim, which by definition they are limited, and to receive the hashpah from this chacham bin das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the wisdom, understanding, knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we explained there in Lamed Tes and Mem, and that the way, it was the chacham of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is beyond even comprehension. We explained there the difference of chacham bina, which in essence the Alter Rebbe already explains in the very beginning of Tanya in the 3rd chapter, which again you can see a click away, and also in Perek Lamed Hey, as Alter Rebbe explains in the famous Ha'ara Kashashamaiti Mimeri, that that Chochma, the Ein Sof, does not unite even with Atzilus only through its investment in Chochma, because Chochma is about Bittul, and again represented by the Yud, Kei Vav Kei of Shema, by the Yud of the Yud, Kei Vav Kei of Shem Hashem. That's why the Yud is the smallest, because Mihu's Rab, that's the one who's Ze'er, in other words, when one is Batul HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's where he becomes the greatest Keli to Elokus, and Chochma is about Kayach Ma being as an expression of total bittul. As Dr. Rebbe explains, the Perek Gimel is the original flash prior to expansion and elaboration, which is again, it's the Kayach of the core of the Seichel, which is again the flash, but it's because it's before and prior to the expansiveness of the concept. It's a Nekuda. Nekuda is about bittul. Again, we're not going to explain it thoroughly, get the idea, I'm sure, but you can see it in the previous classes. A click away, in these different parakim would deal with it. And again, the Kasha Shamaiti Mimeiri in Perek Lamed Hey says it so clearly, because Ein so Baruch Hu's Echad HaEmes, and that is Madregas HaChochma, because Chochma is bittul, and that is what is manifest in Eilam Atzilus, and therefore Eilam Atzilus is called the Eilam Shikuli. It's completely, there's only light in Atzilus. Atzilus Li Gur Chara, even a subtle Ra and a subtle Mitzias and subtle Yeshes. It's all about the total manifestation of Elokus. And total manifestation of Elokus, in other words, the expression of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing could tolerate or handle, nor the Neshamis nor the Malachim of Eilam Abriya. But yet, and therefore, the Yud of Hashem, the way it's, even though here I believe he says Chochma Bina Das, but nonetheless, Chochmasa Minidab Binasa V'Daiti, but the main Chochma, the core of the Chochma HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that belongs to Atzilus. Because again, a Chochma is about Bittul, which is again the Keli to the Ein Sof, to the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the world of Atzilus. Lo Yugur Chara. Bria is the beginning of Aschalas HaYesh, but again, not Chas V'Shalom anything Ra, but the subtle Yesh is already the antithesis of Hashem Echad, one way or another. That's why there's the big gap between Atzilus and Bria Yitzir Asiyah. It's not just another Eilam, it's a total new phenomenon. But yet, what do we know about a Bria? The Bria, for example, it says the Gan Eden Ha'elyon is in Bria. The supreme Gan Eden, with as many levels of Gan Eden as we know, but generally they're divided. Gan Eden HaTachtin, which is an Eilam HaYitzir, and Gan Eden Ha'elyon is Eilam HaBria. Gan Eden Ha'elyon, that's a Belik Vuk, one way or another, experience of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And Hashem's Bina Das, in other words, thorough comprehension and the greatness and the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the extent of a delight and pleasure which the neshamas and even malachim experience. Lashon al Terebe in Shir Hashirim, it's bli gvul. It's bli gvul delight and bli gvul presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Elam HaBriya. But yet you don't have the chokhmah. You don't have the total experience of Atzilus in Bria, because then a Bria would be bottled by Metzias. It wouldn't be a Metzias of a Neshamas, Yeshvin, and we spoke about this a few times. They're Yeshvin, they're sitting. Doesn't mean physical naturally, but there is Neshamas, there's a Metzias, Yeshvin, and Meziv HaShechina, they have a no. From the ray of the Shechina, that doesn't exist when you have the total manifestation of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the experience of Atzilus. But yet, conversely, and it's Bria, it's a creation. You have Neshamas, Malachim, Gan Eden. It's Gan Eden. It's a world. Also, a Metzias Kaviyachol. Not a Metzias that we know that really Metzias Yeshus, that we know the way it is in El Mazeh. But the idea is that it exists. The is so to say antithetical to Elokus. Even the is the antithesis of the total manifestation of Hashem Echad. And that's Bria. But nonetheless, conversely, we say they do appreciate Hashem's, they have a comprehensive understanding of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Neshamas and Malachim, which is again the idea of Gan Eden. It's an appreciation, not only a delight based on a comprehensive understanding and appreciation in Elokus. So this is the dichotomy. On one hand, it's Elam HaBriya, which Elam HaBriya has, it's about the understanding, appreciation of Elokus. With that says the Chochmah and Bin V'das of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu is invested in Bria, and that's the way they're able to intellectualize and appreciate and comprehend the Elokus. But nonetheless, we must say it's not the Chochmah Min V'das the way it is in Atzilus, because there you have the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, one way or another. Atzilus is Lashon Etzli V'Samuch Lei. It's a Olam which is completely one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the Chochmah Min V'das, the way it comes into Bria, through its Tzimtzumot, through a great contraction, in order that the Neshamas and Malachim, which by definition are created beings, created entities, and therefore, as such, they're Bali Gvul V'Tachlis, in other words, they're limited. One way or another, they could be Mekabel, the Hashpah, B'chinas Chabad Elu, they could receive this Hashpah from these Chochmah Min V'das. Now, what's the connection to Talmud? Because that's what Talmud is all about. Let's go back a little bit. So the Yud of the Yud Kevavke remains in Atzilus. The Bina Das, which is the Hey, Bina is about expansion of wisdom, that becomes manifest in Elam HaBriya. The Vav, which is Hashem's 6 Midas, becomes manifest in Elam HaYetzira. And the Hey in Elam HaAsiyah. And he explains over here that this is the connection with the Talmud is associated with Elam HaBriya, and then he's going to say the Mishnah, for example, is associated with Elam HaYetzira, because the whole point is of the Mishnah. What's the whole point of the Mishnah? The whole point of the Mishnah tells us the halachas. The halachas, lahakil lahachim, to be lenient or strict. The Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, Potter, Osir, Zakai, Chayav, and in Tomei Toyer. This is all based on the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As we said a number of times, we spoke about this in the past as well, Beis Hillel, because his Sheidish and Neshama was more from Chesed, namely from Chesed, therefore he was Mekel. Beis Shammai was their Sheidish, the source of their soul, the source and root of their soul, was Gvura, so they were more Machmir. But again, it was predicated on the rules of Torah naturally, even though with Halacha becomes like one, and we paskin generally like Beis Hillel. But what do we see from all this? When you learn simply Mishnayos, which speaks about halachas psukis, established halachas, we understand that this is connected with the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The whole reason why it's lahakil, if it's lenient or strict, or something in between, let's say, it's because it's associated with Hashem's midas, chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, chayd, yisod, malchus. And he says that's why Mishnah is connected to Elam HaYetzira. You have these halachas psukis, which again is associated with the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. While Talmud is already the thought, the svaris, the logic behind these piskei dinim which are brought in the Mishnah. As we see, the Mishnah is very brief, says the halachas, and you have pages of the Talmud explaining this very Mishnah. Explanation is, again, understanding of a matter, and understanding doesn't come out of nowhere. It is rooted in on high, which is the Chochmah Bina V'Kodesh Baruch Hu, and then that's the Chochmah Bina V'Das V'Kodesh Baruch Hu, which is invested in Elam Abriya. O Misham Talmud L'Faneinu. The Talmud, which is again the wisdom, the understanding of the matters of Torah, this comes from Elam Abriya, because Elam Abriya is about the Chochmah Binasa, the Daita of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but yet the way it comes to it seems some a great contraction, and we can all appreciate that. Even the Talmud, the fact that we can understand it, shows that it's not the way the Chochmah Bina V'das of the Ein Sof, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way it's in Atzilus, because then there's no comprehension. And in the world of Atzilus, because that the Chochmah is the energy and the driving force of the entire Atzilus, everything about Atzilus is B'li Gvul. Even the Bina is V'lei Bevina Yediyah, and the Das, by definition, because the Chochmah is the energy and the driving force and the spirit of the entire Atzilus. So the fact that we can understand a halacha, comprehend an halacha, appreciate halacha, it also goes through that simtsum otzum, that great contraction. Which again, the first experience of that great contraction, or the Chabad with its great contraction, resides primarily in El Mabriya. Therefore, Misham Talmud Shulfaneinu. And let's see, Nitzavillachei Nimshach. Misham Talmud, from there comes the Talmud. Shugam Kimchnis Chabad. It's also Chabad. Chacham Bin Adas. Talmud Taimi Halachas Alborin. It's the reasoning, the rationale of these halachas Alborin, which means thoroughly. And the timing, when we say reason, the rationale, something that's Chabad, that's the Chacham Bin Adas, understanding, comprehending the matters. Then you have the halachas Atzma, and the halachas themselves, that comes from Midais of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we just explained. Shein Chesed Din Rachamim, which is kindness, severity, and compassion. Chulu, and he goes through all the other midas, which halachas psukas are associated, even though predominantly through chesed and gvura, which we can see evidently in these halachas, it's mutter or asr. Mutter is because, as comes from the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there's a way to elevate it, to sublimate that, and therefore becomes mutter. Via when we say it's asr, it's associated with gvura, you ought to distance it, which is again the midas of gvura, but rachamim, compassion, and all the other midas are ultimately connected to the expression, the manifestation of these halachas. From the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we could all understand, again, as we just explained, comes this which is permitted and prohibited. Again, that be chesed and gvura. Kosher, it's pasul, qualified or disqualified. Chiyuv, ptur, obligated, exempt. This comes from the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Talmud associated with El Mabriya. Chabad of Atzilus, through a great simtzum, through a great contraction, but that's connected to El Mabriya. And then you have the as we're going to learn Bez Hashem, then this very energy of El Mabriya would enter into El Yitzira, which is a world on its own, and also again has to go through the Chabad, the Chacham Bin Adas of El Mabriya, of El Yitzira, in order to be manifested in El Yitzira and to create the Neshamas Malachim of El Yitzira, ultimately Ganei Natachtin, as we just noted, and eventually, as he's going to say, the Mishnayis, these halachas, psukas, these established halachas, without any reason, come from El Yitzira, because El Yitzira is where the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? We say the Yud remains in Atzilus, the Hey, which is Bina and Das, namely Bina, but as well Das in El Mabriya. And El Mabriya houses again the Hey, the Bina and Das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The six midas, which is the Vav, Yud K Vav, also that's the reason why the Vav, the numerical value of Vav is 6, which is the six midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is housed in El Babaya El Yitzira. And it's manifest in El Yitzira. And then the Hey in El Masiyah. And therefore the six midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu becomes the source of the Mishnayis Shelefonein, the Mishnayis that we have, which are halachas psukas beyond reason, or the reason is not there when you learn the Mishnah. You just learn this is mutter, pasul, kosher, osir, chayiv, and potter, which is again chesed, gvura, tiferes, at the end of the day, all the other midas, which establish and the reason of why this halacha is paskin in that manner. But that's only when it goes through again the Chacham Minadas of that particular world. And then he's going to go on to El Masiyah, and then he's going to go on which is the spiritual Olam Asiya, and eventually in Perek Nun Gimel he's going to go on the way the Elokus is manifest down here in this world, also through the actual physical shrine of Kodesh HaKadoshim. And the luchas, and the first bias, and the second bias, and now we don't have the Beis Hamikdash Shlishis through it. You get learning in Torah, but again, we'll Be'ez Hashem get to there, and we're going to start again from this where the Yitzira, again where we left off over here. I just want to add one more thing over here, a note that the Rebbe points out, what does it mean, Misham Nimshach Talmud Shalafamneinu? Apparently, and we say it comes from El Mabriya, we say time and again, even in this very chapter, that Torah is Chachmas Shetzaynu Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chacham Bin Das, and then Hu Yisbarach Chachmas say Echad, it's one, and therefore we're talking about the Chacham of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chakim B'Lei B'Chacham Yidei, which is the spirit of Atzilus, and we're talking about the Chachma of Atzilus, and all along we know that Torah is the Ein Ein Sof, which is in Chachma. So all of a sudden he says in Misham, from Bria Nimshach Talmud, what's that supposed to mean? Or someone's going to suggest, oh, that's the Talmud. If you learn a pasuk in Chumash, maybe you're connected to Chachma. If you learn Talmud, it's already a step lower. No, we know that every part of Torah a person learns is connected to Chachma. If you see in Perek Hey, and Perek Chod Gimel, and Perek Lamed Zayin, and Tanya the Rebbe speaks about the superiority of Torah even over mitzvahs, because this is the core energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anechi Hashem Alikecha, the Eibishter placed himself in Torah, the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all of a sudden you're saying Misham from Bria. So the Rebbe points out that's the point of a Talmud Shel Lefonenu, and you find this also in Kuntris Achrin, towards the end of Kuntris Achrin. There's no prokim there. There's no numbers of prokim. The Rebbe says a similar idea that there is the Talmud itself and there's the Talmud Shel Lefonenu, because we're dealing with it, we're learning it, we're trying to understand it and comprehend and have a comprehension in this Talmud that we're learning. So therefore, it already connects with a certain confinement or a certain limitation, because we are limited human beings as part of Hashem's creation. So therefore, there is something of the Chabad of Bria, which is really associated with the study of, in other words, not the study itself, not the information. Information all will always remain Chochmas Yirutzein Shel Kodesh Baruch Hu, but the Talmud Shel Lefonenu, our studying it, it is already associated with El Mabriya, similar to the like we said over here, the Neshamas and Malachim of El Mabriya appreciate the Chacham Bina V'Das Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it needs to go through the Tzimtzum Otzum, the great contraction, an intense contraction, as he says, Bichdei Sheyuchla Neshamas V'Malachim Shembalig Gvul V'Tachlis, in order that a finite being, which in this case is the Neshamas and Malachim, they're finite, they should be able to comprehend and appreciate and derive pleasure from. Again, when you derive pleasure from, it means it's not the Ein Ein Sof, because if it's the Ein Ein Sof itself, we mentioned this in the past, that it's just overwhelming. Nothing could exist in the face of the Ein Ein Sof. No pleasures, no appreciations, no delights, it's nothing. It's just a matter of complete consumption and incorporation into the energy of the Ein Sof. So the fact that he says it regarding the Neshamas and Malachim, which are divested of body, that in order for them to appreciate the Chabad of Atzilus, it has to go through the great contraction. So understanding, when we speak about the Talmud Shel Lefonenu, our learning, it already has to go through this again, contraction, one way or another, and as such, thus its association with Elam HaBriya, even though the Torah itself, every part of Torah, if it's a mission, if it's Talmud, Shulchan Aruch, Tanya, any part of which is real, truly Torah, in the end of the day, is part of the Chachmasei, the Chachma, the core Chachma, the Chachma Atzilus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'chvei De'Va'atzmei. Have a wonderful night.